So welcome back. In this particular session, we'll be talking about data models. So the last two sessions we have discussed about data, information, and data processing. So in this particular session, we'll be talking about data models. Okay. So what do you understand by data models? Data model is definition is nothing but a conceptual tool which will use to describe the data. Yes. Then the relationship of the data, then data semantics and the consistency constraint. Okay. Okay. So whenever you're talking about a particular data model, okay, this model actually describes the data. It will talk what kind of relationship that the data exists. Okay. And when you talk about constraint means some kind of limitation and restriction that has to be there. And consistency means that whenever there is any kind of changes in the data itself, it has to be moved from one consistent to another consistent. And while doing so, there are certain limitations and restriction may be there which has to be added and has to be done. And in data semantics we have to understand in aspect is the what the and that understanding the data, the meaning of the data itself. So data model holistically will be considering all in the data itself, the relationship, the semantics, and the constraint, the consistency con- constraint itself. So there are different type of data models are there. So one, broadly, it is divided into two. One is called an object-based logical model. Under that, it comes an entity relationship model, which we're going to discuss more in details in the upcoming session itself. And next is a record-based, logical model. Under record-based logic model, we have three data model. One is a hierarchical data model, second is a network data model, and last is the relationship data model. So we'll see one after another. And lastly, when you come to the relation data model, it is very important that our entire, when you move into the session itself, we'll be talking about mostly more into relational, data models. So let us take an example of storing some record of a person, okay, some record of a customers of a bank itself. So we have the name of we have an ID of the customer which is 101. Then name of the person, meet a Mike, okay. Let us say what kind of bank account he has, like savings bank account number, then where the branch is, the email IDs and all, right? Then you can see one particular record containing all these things. Second particular record, it may constant that this particular person is having some kind of loan which every suppose monthly he has to pay 8,755 like that. So you can see the entire record has been associated in form of a hierarchy, right? So that is what is the hierarchical data model itself. Okay. And typically the example IBM information management system and RDBM mobile. So these are the certain example of hierarchical database who follow the hierarchical data model. Okay. So let us understand some of the what you say advantage of this. You can see you can have some kind of relationship, right? As I'm talking about this particular loan, he may have some kind of other like he can go for a fixed deposit, he can go for a recurring and something like that. So you can have multiple from one itself. We can have many kind of relationship that can exist, but there may not there but in the limitation part there may not be many to many kind of relationship itself, right? Yes. So although hierarchical data promotes, data sharing has kind of parent-child relationship and all this thing, but it is very complex to implement. It's difficult to manage as there is no kind of, DDL and DML. Lack of standards is another, disadvantage of hierarchical model. So when you talk about DDL, is a data definition language, and DML means data manipulation language itself. Okay. So let us move to next is the record based in a network. So the same example, so it will be one record will be linked with the another record. Yes. And sometimes the same thing, same kind of another record is been linked to the next record itself. One record will be then again will be bifurcated two different type of links and all these things. So this is a typical structure. This is the typical structure of the network data model itself. And one of the important example is the integrated data management system. Okay, right? So Having said this, we have understood, network data model. Okay, so network model is it handles what is a many to many kind of relationship. These are more clear when you go down the line when you talk about the relationships and all these things. So we can have a complex, relationship. It can be easily, you can easily, represent it. More flexible, improve the performance of the data and all. But still, again, the complexity is the limit itself, right? And you can say that database contain a complex array of pointer that trade through a set of records itself. Okay, right? And since more and more network we are concentrating it, so if you try to make more such kind of thing, then what will happen is that completely it may be chaotic itself. Okay, so now having said this on network model, we come up to the relational model. So in the relational model, is that entire data is represented in the structure where you will have certain rows, we have certain rows or records or tuples or attributes, columns and field. So here you can see customer ID, right? Customer last name, customer name, SM Mike 101. So 1020 is the account number. Okay, savings. Then we have the branch number, where exactly the branch is. Okay, and the email ID of the customer itself. So each of these row is different. Okay, each of the row is different. That is how. So in here in a entire table is called as a relationship, and we don't call it mostly on rows and records itself. We call as tuples, and attribute and column. We simply talk about attributes itself, right? So one the example of relational data models is Oracle. So we next move to the relational model basics. Okay, data, as I was telling, data is viewed as an existing two-dimensional table. Okay, and that two-dimensional itself is called as a relations. And a relation consists of unique attributes, the columns, the tuples, the row itself. Okay, tuples are unique that we have seen. Sometimes the value to be inserted into a particular cell may not be known, so we will simply move say it is a null. And please understand, null is different, zero is different, and you have to understand that null doesn't mean there is some kind of there is no kind of value itself and all this thing, right? So null is not same as zero or blank or empty skill. That is something which you have to remember. And relational database, a database whose logical organization is based on the relational database we are talking about is any database which is a logical organization based on the relation data model itself. Okay, right? So RDMS is one type of things which is talk about relation database. So advantage is that easier way for data design, implementation, management because it's a tabular view and all these things. Okay, right? And as DBMS is there, the end user is directly isolated from the physical level in implementation and helps improve implementation. But however, disadvantage is that conceptual simplicity gives relatively untrained people the tools to use the good system properly. Yes, mostly we'll see that since this is a complete understanding of the model is required. So if we have some kind of bunch of untrained people, then it may make the system completely poor itself. So having said this, this is what we are talking about. We are talking about the types of data models, right? What is a data? What is a data model? What are the types of data model? So we are divided into object-based logical model, or we have said that record-based logical model. Under object model, we have entity relationship, and record-based, we have the hierarchical, we have the network, and we have the relational data model itself. So, right, yes, so that we have understood, then we have seen each in hierarchical database how it is done, how in network data model how it has been done, and relation data model how it has been done, right? So having said this, I hope it is all of you have a little bit of clear idea about the data models itself. Okay, so thank you so much.